This case just gets all the more strange with every passing charge that we hear about. Yeah, I mean, this is a story that just gets more strange with every passing charge that's laid here. We have now a third Ukrainian who has been charged in connection with a conspiracy to commit arson and endanger life, all linked to property that is linked to the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. And in court today was Petro Pochinok, 34-year-old from Holloway Road in North London. He is now standing accused alongside Stanislav Karpiuk and Roman Lavronovich, all three men, all Ukrainians, charged with this conspiracy that resulted from a number of firebomb attacks, one on the 12th of May at the family home of Sir Keir Starmer in Kentish Town, a fire that was confined to the doorway of that address and quickly extinguished by the fire service. But 4 days before that, a car that the Prime Minister used to own but then sold to a neighbour in that same street as his home address, that was firebombed. And then a day before the fire in Kentish Town, an address linked to the Prime Minister more than 2 decades ago, an address that he used to own, was again firebombed. A similar attack to the one in Kentish Town, confined to the doorway. A resident of that property had to be rescued by the fire service, but luckily was uninjured. All three of these men who stand accused of this conspiracy to commit arson have been remanded into custody. They will all appear at the Central Criminal Court for their first Crown Court appearance. That's the Old Bailey on the 6th of June.
A quiet street in North London turned into a crime scene. Then another, then a third. What looked like scattered incidents of arson suddenly took a sharp political turn. Because every one of the targeted buildings had a strange link. They were all tied to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Our authorities believe this wasn't a coincidence. It was a coordinated effort with international suspects, a deliberate timeline, and potentially a much bigger agenda. In a country already teetering on political tension, this string of attacks has raised far more than just alarm bells. It's raised questions about national security, foreign interference, and the safety of high-profile officials.
A third man has been arrested in connection with attacks on 2 properties and a car linked to Sir Keir Starmer. The 34-year-old is being held on suspicion of conspiracy to commit arson with intent to endanger life. 2 other men, a 26-year-old and a 21-year-old Ukrainian national, are also in custody.
When it looked like things couldn't get stranger, the accused began naming names. Not just among themselves, but someone they claimed gave the orders. A name that could turn this entire case into something far more dangerous than anyone expected. This isn't just vandalism. It's not petty crime. What's unfolding could reshape how Britain handles political threats in the age of international unrest. The police didn't just stumble onto this case. They followed a clear trail. And at the end of it were 3 foreign nationals now accused of orchestrating a calculated arson spree. Each from different backgrounds, but somehow working together with a focus that's raised serious eyebrows. First, there's Roman Lavronovich.
This case just gets all the more strange with every passing charge that we hear about. This is Stanislav Karpiuk, who is a Ukrainian, born in Ukraine, but raised for at least part of the time in Romania. He's a Romanian national in that sense, but has been living for a number of years in the UK, currently addressed in Romford in East London. He is charged alongside another Ukrainian, Roman Lavronovich, who appeared in court last Friday. They are both charged with a series of firebomb attacks on properties linked to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. One of those firebomb attacks was on a property in Kentish Town, confined to the entrance to that property and quickly dealt with. That was on the 12th of May. 4 days before that, he had, or 4 days before that, another piece of property, a car this time, that was linked to Keir Starmer previously. He had sold that to a neighbour on that same street in Kentish Town, was set ablaze. And then a day before the Kentish Town house fire, another property that was owned by Sir Keir Starmer 2 decades ago was set fire as well, and someone had to be rescued from the property in that time but were uninjured. So yeah, a strange case, no idea yet on the possible motivation, just that 2 Ukrainians have been charged. A third man, a 34-year-old who was arrested in Chelsea yesterday, is still being questioned by police.
A 21-year-old Ukrainian national, then Stanislav Karpiak, a 26-year-old Romanian, and finally Petro Pochino, a 34-year-old also from Ukraine. All 3 now find themselves behind bars, with prosecutors alleging they carried out coordinated fire attacks across London. But even before the trial began, the case took a strange turn. While 2 of the suspects appeared via video from a high-security prison, one of them flat out refused to show up. Pochino never left his cell. He skipped his own court appearance without explanation, an act that left the judge visibly unimpressed and the courtroom buzzing. It was the first signal that this case wasn't going to follow the usual script. And the charges? Far more serious than typical arson. Authorities believe these men weren't just setting fires, they were sending a message. The alleged attacks didn't happen in a single night. They unfolded over weeks, with disturbing precision. Each location carried symbolic weight. Each date seemed deliberately chosen. Investigators now believe the pattern points to more than just random destruction. It began on April 17th, when a suspicious fire was reported in a quiet part of London. It didn't make national headlines, yet. But
police and fire investigators have been here gathering evidence, and a 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life in connection with all 3 fires. The first fire began on Thursday, the 8th of May. Firefighters were seen tackling a blazing car here on a residential street in North London. The vehicle has been owned by the Prime Minister's family, and it happened just a few doors down from his family's home. 3 days later, another fire, this time in Islington, just 3 miles from where the first blaze took place, at a property also connected to the PM. Then on Monday morning, a suspected arson attack on the property owned by Sir Keir Starmer in Kentish Town. It's where he lived before moving to Downing Street when he became Prime Minister. Scorch marks are clearly visible on the brickwork around the porch. Fortunately, no one has been injured, but counter-terrorism police are leading the investigation. A 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life in relation to all 3 fires.
just 3 weeks later, the fires escalated. On May 8th, a vehicle went up in flames in Kentish Town, a location that happens to be the former neighbourhood of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Then, 3 days after that, a converted flat in Islington was struck. And finally, on May 12th, the most direct hit. Starmer's actual former residence was allegedly targeted in the early morning hours for 3 attacks in 5 days, all on properties with links to the sitting Prime Minister. Not political offices, not public buildings, private spaces. That detail alone has elevated this case to a matter of national concern. It wasn't just about fire, it was about intimidation, optics, and, possibly, sending a message loud enough to echo through Westminster. Justice in the UK can move slowly, but in this case the delay feels especially surreal. Though the suspects were charged this spring, the next hearing isn't set until October 17th. And the actual trial, that won't begin until April 27th, 2026. That's nearly 2 full years for the system to gather evidence, prepare legal arguments, and navigate what's already being described as a politically sensitive case. By then, the political landscape could look completely different. A general election might have come and gone. Starmer's position may have changed, but the accused will still be standing trial for attacks that allegedly targeted the homes of Britain's sitting Prime Minister. Starmer dates charges of reckless damage. Prosecutors are arguing intent to endanger lives. That puts this case in a category far beyond vandalism.
A 4th person has just been arrested in connection to the arson attacks on Prime Minister Rodney's properties. The Police say the 48-year-old man was arrested and detained at Stansted Airport. They also go on to say that he was initially stopped by officers under the Terrorism Act, before then being arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit arson with intent to endanger life. But they have not yet released the information of where this 48-year-old man is initially from. Is he from Ukraine like the others? Well, I think they're kind of claiming one of them was Romanian, but he also had a Ukrainian citizenship. But what is going on behind this? The three men are due to reappear in court, I think, on the 6th of June. Will we find more details then as to what has led to all of this? What's behind all of this? Many people saying and believing that Rodney had some sort of relationship with one of them, the initial attacker or the initial suspect. Let's wait and see, give it a couple of days. The other three suspects are back in court. Let's see what information comes to light. I personally think they're going to cover this up in some way, shape or form, especially if he's got any connection to any of the 3 or 4 blokes that have been arrested on it. Just know they'll fucking cover it up, for fuck's sake.
It becomes an assault, not just on individuals, but on public safety and political stability. The long timeline raises questions, but it also reflects the weight of the accusations. Every detail will be scrutinized, from phone records to travel histories. And if a broader conspiracy is proven, the fallout won't be limited to 3 men in prison jumpsuits. Just when investigators thought they had the full picture, another development took everyone by surprise. A 4th suspect, completely separate from the original trio, was arrested at Stansted Airport. The man, 48 years old, was attempting to leave the country when authorities intercepted him. No dramatic chase, no cover story, just a quiet arrest at one of the UK's busiest travel hubs. Officials haven't released his name yet, but the timing is crucial. He was detained just days after the other suspects were charged, suggesting that investigators may be following a broader web of connections. What was he doing at the airport? Was he actually fleeing, or was it just a terrible coincidence? Either way, the man is now out on bail pending further questioning. His court date is set for July. Until then, he's under watch, likely wondering if his travel plans just turned into the biggest mistake of his life. This surprise arrest adds a new layer to the case, one that suggests these attacks may not have been a 3-man operation after all. Step back from the courtroom drama, and the gravity of this case becomes clearer. These weren't just fires on random streets. Each attack targeted properties directly tied to Britain's Prime Minister. That elevates this from a criminal matter to a national security concern. The involvement of foreign nationals adds another layer of complexity. Were these individuals acting on their own, or is there a wider network at play? The inclusion of Romanian and Ukrainian suspects has already raised questions about cross-border intelligence cooperation and how easily such a plot could unfold without early detection. And what about the claim that someone else, someone still unnamed, was behind it all? If the suspects were following orders, that opens up even more dangerous territory. It turns arson into potential political sabotage. Yet despite the weight of the charges and the chaos they've caused, the legal system continues to operate with due process. Each suspect will have their day in court. Evidence will be tested, allegations will face scrutiny, but the broader implications will linger. How vulnerable are public figures in the UK? And how prepared is the country to deal with coordinated threats that don't wear a uniform or carry a flag? This case is far from over. With new suspects, unanswered questions, and a trial nearly a year away, what we've seen so far might just be the beginning. If prosecutors uncover more links, or if the defendants reveal more names, we could be looking at a case that stretches beyond arson and into something far more organised. For now, the courts will do their work, the public will wait, and political leaders, especially Keir Starmer, will be watching closely, knowing these attacks weren't just close to home, they were at home. We'll be following every twist, every update, and every courtroom reveal. So if you want just 3 weeks later, the fires escalated. On May 8th, a vehicle went up in flames in Kentish Town, a location that happens to be the former neighbourhood of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Then, 3 days after that, a converted flat in Islington was struck. And finally, on May 12th, the most direct hit. Starmer's actual former residence was allegedly targeted in the early morning hours for 3 attacks in 5 days, all on properties with links to the sitting Prime Minister. Not political offices, not public buildings, private spaces. That detail alone has elevated this case to a matter of national concern, It wasn't just about fire, it was about intimidation, optics, and possibly sending a message loud enough to echo through Westminster. Justice in the UK can move slowly, but in this case, the delay feels especially surreal. Though the suspects were charged this spring, the next hearing isn't set until October 17th. And the actual trial, that won't begin until April 27th, 2026. That's nearly 2 full years for the system to gather evidence, prepare legal arguments, and navigate what's already being described as a politically sensitive case. By then, the political landscape could look completely different. A general election might have come and gone. Starmer's position may have changed, but the accused will still be standing trial. Full story, the real context, and the sharp analysis most networks won't touch. Stay with us. This is UK Tribune, where we unpack the chaos and connect the dots. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next report. Until then, stay informed and stay sharp.